1,000 years ago, before Columbus, before the known history of European conquest, a new world waited across the Atlantic, a land untouched by old world ambitions. And yet, it was not empty. It was alive. Alive with people who had lived, hunted, and thrived there for generations. The Vikings, fearless seafarers of the North, were about to cross paths with them. And history remembers this encounter not as trade or friendship, but as shock, bloodshed, and betrayal. What happened when the ice-born warriors of the North met the resilient peoples of the New World? Stay with us, because what follows is a story of courage, conflict, and survival that has been buried in time until now. By the end of this video, you'll know why these early clashes shaped the course of history, and why the Vikings never returned. But first, how did they get there? Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, was no stranger to ambition. From Greenland, where his father had carved out a survivalist colony, Leif led expeditions further west. The sagas tell of lands rich with timber and fertile soil, far beyond the icy fjords of the north. They arrived in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, at a site that would become L'Anse aux Meadows, the first known European settlement in the Americas. But arrival alone did not guarantee safety. For every step they took on this new soil, they were stepping into a world already fiercely defended by its people. The Norse were about to meet the Skraelings, the mysterious, skilled, and deadly indigenous inhabitants. Their first encounters would decide who controlled this strange land. At first, the meetings between the Vikings and the indigenous peoples were cautious, measured, almost ceremonial. The Norse, with their polished armor and iron tools, approached with the tentative respect of outsiders stepping into a new, wild world. The Skraelings, as the Vikings called them, a word carried both awe and fear, watched silently, their eyes sharp, their movements deliberate, reading the strangers with centuries of survival instinct. In these early days, gestures were exchanged like fragile currency. Furs, tools, and food passed hands. Curiosity flickered across both sides. The Vikings marveled at the knowledge the Skraelings possessed. They knew every bend in the river, every hidden clearing, every path that could hide a predator or an enemy. They could vanish into the trees like ghosts, leaving the Norse grasping at shadows. For a fleeting moment, hope glimmered. Perhaps these two worlds, so different, yet bound by the same hunger for survival, could coexist. Perhaps the icy steel of the North and the deep forests of the New World could find some balance. But such hope was fragile. A single act, a misunderstanding over trade, a misinterpreted gesture, a stolen item, could shatter the delicate thread holding peace together. And it did. What began as cautious curiosity erupted into violent confrontation. Spears and arrows would soon punctuate the forest with danger, and the once silent woods echoed with the cries of warriors on both sides. Blood painted the ground, leaving a grim reminder that first contact was never merely about curiosity. It was a test of dominance, endurance, and willpower. The Vikings would learn, painfully, that the New World did not surrender easily. And as the first skirmishes ignited, neither side would emerge unchanged. The stage was set for a battle that would be remembered in legend and in the scars etched across the land itself. Stories tell of a pivotal moment. A Norse traitor, perhaps too bold, crossed a line, and the Skraelings struck back. Spears flew, arrows hissed. What had begun as curiosity turned into chaos. The Vikings were skilled warriors, but the New World was alien. The Skraelings knew the land, the rivers, and the hidden approaches. Even the Norse longships, their pride and fearsome advantage, could not fully protect them from guerrilla attacks on unfamiliar soil. And yet, the Norse retaliated with brutal force, relying on steel and iron against weapons of bone and stone. The conflict escalated, a deadly dance of ambushes and counterattacks that would define the very idea of first contact in North America. But the clash was about to reach its violent peak in a confrontation historians now call the Battle of Vinland. Vinland became a battlefield unlike anything the Vikings had ever faced. Thorfinn Karlsefni, a chieftain driven by ambition and the promise of a new world, led a small band of settlers into unknown territory. Every step through the thick forests was a test of courage, of wits, of survival. The Skraelings, masters of the land they called home, watched with a patience that belied deadly intent. They struck from the shadows, disappearing as quickly as they appeared, forcing the Vikings to chase ghosts through a labyrinth of trees, rivers, and hidden marshes. Spears flew, arrows hissed through the air, and every Norse shield that raised to block an attack invited another. The clash of steel against steel rang through the woods, echoing across the cold, untamed land. The Vikings fought with the precision and ferocity that had earned them fear across Europe, yet their enemy was unlike any they had faced before. The Skraelings adapted with every encounter, learning the rhythm of Norse assaults, exploiting their patterns, and slipping past traps that would have ensnared a lesser foe. For every victory the Vikings claimed, the Skraelings responded with cunning countermeasures, turning the forest into a living, breathing weapon against them. Casualties mounted on both sides. Blood soaked the ground, leaving a bitter reminder that mastery of iron alone could not guarantee survival. And as the sun sank behind the trees, the harsh reality settled over the Norse. This was a war they could not easily win. The battle would not only test the limits of their skill and courage, it would alter the course of their expedition forever. The aftermath would decide the fate of Vinland and seal a chapter in history that the Vikings would never forget. Despite their courage and skill, the Vikings could not sustain themselves. Lansall Meadows was isolated, exposed, and constantly under threat. Food was scarce, reinforcements were far away, and every day brought new skirmishes. Faced with relentless opposition and the harsh North American winters, the Norse made a fateful decision: retreat. They left Vinland, leaving behind their dreams of conquest. But the story of their clash lingered, etched into the memories of the land and the people who defended it. Their retreat was not defeat alone. It was a revelation of the resilience of the Skraelings and the harsh reality of survival in an untamed world. If you're captivated by these clashes of worlds, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next journey into the shadowed corners of history. And turn on the notification bell, because the stories history forgot are waiting. But evidence of these encounters is not just in the sagas, it's in the soil itself. Archaeology has confirmed fragments of what the sagas described. Iron nails, rivets, and Norse-style dwellings were unearthed at Lansall Meadows, alongside tools and remnants of indigenous life. These artifacts tell a story: brief coexistence, tentative trade, and violent confrontation. They are echoes of a moment when two vastly different worlds collided, leaving only traces to puzzle modern historians. Yet, for all the artifacts found, the true stories, the fear, the courage, the betrayal, are etched in imagination and legend, waiting to be pieced together. And these encounters left more than artifacts. They left a cultural imprint that would ripple through centuries. The clash between the Vikings and the Skraelings was brief, but its reverberations stretched far beyond the forests of Vinland. For the Norse, it was more than a battle. It was a harsh lesson in humility. The iron and steel that had conquered Europe proved insufficient here. Brute force alone could not bend this land or its people to their will. Every skirmish revealed the limits of their power, and every setback carved into the Vikings a realization they could not ignore. In Vinland, they were not the masters. They were outsiders in a world that belonged to another. For the Skraelings, these encounters were an early trial of resilience, a test against foreign invaders armed with unfamiliar weapons and strange intentions. Their knowledge of the land, their strategic cunning, and their ability to adapt ensured that Vinland remained theirs, at least in spirit. And though the Norse would vanish from North America, the memory of their arrival lingered, etched into stories, legends, and oral histories that would survive for generations. These fleeting encounters shaped perceptions of outsiders for both cultures. They became folklore, a narrative of caution, bravery, and the unpredictable cost of contact between worlds. The subtle cultural imprint of these meetings reminds us that history is not merely a ledger of dates, battles, and victories. It is the echo of human experience. The lives lived, the choices made under pressure, the courage displayed, and the survival against all odds, these are the true legacies left behind. But as Vinland faded from Norse memory, the final chapter of this saga carries a haunting truth, a story of ambition, survival, and the high cost of being first to cross into a new world. And that truth is about to be revealed. The Vikings came, they fought, and they retreated. But their clash with the native peoples of North America was more than a skirmish. It was the first encounter of two worlds, a collision of ambition and survival, of steel and earth. History often forgets the voices of those who resisted. The Skraelings defended their land, leaving only whispers in the wind of their courage and cunning. And the Vikings? They left behind stories of daring, hubris, and the bitter lessons of a land that would not yield. If you found this journey into the shadowed edges of history compelling, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. And don't stop here. Click the next video on the screen to uncover more forgotten, dark, and fascinating moments in history.